Wall Street is debating when the Fed will start to cut rates and whether the U.S. economy will achieve a soft landing. But in terms of the health of the economy, there may be an easier way to evaluate it. Recent economic data show the U.S. economy might be finally getting back to a pre-COVID normal. Yahoo Finance's very own Rick Newman has the story. Rick.
Hey, guys. So we got 199,000 new jobs in November. I looked up what was the average monthly job creation during the 8 years prior to the COVID outbreak in March 2020. Guess what? It was 196,000. So only 3,000 difference there. And then I looked up, well, what was average wage growth when you adjusted for inflation in those 8 years prior to COVID? It was about 0.8% per year. Guess what it is now? 0.8% per year. So job numbers are now looking like they did before COVID. And I think that would be great news for everybody if we could just get beyond all of these distortions in the economy that were caused by COVID, including inflation, and get back to what just feels like a normal economy where we're not always trying to figure out why are things so weird. Inflation is not there yet. The pre-COVID average was around 1.6%. It's around 3.2%. But that has been coming down, as we've been discussing quite frequently. And in fact, we got another good read today in the Michigan Consumer Survey, which asked people what they think inflation is going to be in the future. And Americans are a lot less concerned about inflation than they were just 4 months ago or 6 months ago. So I think we're getting back to a normal economy. We're not going to have gangbuster 5.2% GDP growth like we did in the third quarter. But, you know, if the economy chugs along at 1% GDP growth, 1.5%, 2%, which is where we might be landing right now, I think that would be great.
Well, as always, Rick, we got to ask you, what are the implications for the president and his reelection campaign, right? Because as we've frequently talked about, inflation is kind of the thing that voters seem to grade him on.
So if we could get into an economy that feels normal, and I emphasize that word feels because the squishy part of consumer psychology is really important here. I mean, we've discussed this many times. People just don't think it's a solid economy. They think it's terrible. And by some measures, consumer attitudes are recessionary. I mean, they're close to the lows of the financial crash in 2008 and 2009. The economy is not nearly that bad. Americans are way too gloomy. So if they can start to feel better, I think it would be unambiguous good news for President Biden. So, you know, we've had super strong job growth under Biden. I mean, he is right when he says it's the strongest job growth of any president in U.S. history. That is correct. Now, that doesn't mean Biden deserves all the credit for it. He happened to come into office just as this super strong COVID recovery was coming into place. But if we could enjoy all that job growth, let all that job growth sit there, let workers regain some of the ground they've lost to inflation when inflation was higher than wages, and it is now flipped around. Wages are now higher than inflation. I mean, yes, I think you would see people gradually feeling better. I mean, Biden's in kind of a race against consumer psychology at this point, with the race being whether consumer attitudes improve enough to push up his approval rating, which of course has been very depressed around 40%. He needs it around 45%, and higher would be better for his reelection odds. So that's what I'm looking for the next 6 months, is whether we see his approval rating start to creep up as the economy normalizes.
Look forward to talking to you about it as you watch it. Rick Newman, thanks.
Bye, guys.